So the Boston Celtics are in a major dilemma right now. So obviously they're set to tip off in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Indiana Pacers. Congrats to both teams for being able to get to this level, especially the Pacers, who I thought was going to be done in the first round, right? I mean, Milwaukee, I thought was going to beat them even with Giannis being out. I didn't think the Pacers had the defensive chops to handle that Bucks team, but they were able to pull it out. Then they won in that second round against the Knicks, which was also a surprise to me for them to go into Madison Square Garden and play in such a dominant way against that Knicks team that was really tough to beat in that arena. And so here they are in the conference finals. Shout out to that team and shout out to the Celtics for being able to make it to this level once again. But obviously, there's not a team right now with more pressure on them to win a title than the Celtics. We want to see them win the championship. It's not about them getting to the finals anymore or just getting over the hump. It's about them bringing it back home, bringing back that Larry O'Brien trophy and closing the deal. It's been too many seasons of them being this super deep playoff team, the super high seed in the Eastern Conference, having good postseason moments, but getting into those big moments, right, in those deep playoff series and not being able to convert. Last year was the most disappointing, losing to the Miami Heat, who were an 8-seeded team. And I'm not taking any credit away from the Miami Heat, but you are the number one seed. I think the Celtics were the top seed last year. You shouldn't be losing to a team that was in a play-in tournament, right? You shouldn't be in a position to where you're having to try to go 7 games and it's coming down to the wire against that type of team. You're more talented than them, right? A ton of playoff experience, a ton of finals experience. Not saying the Heat didn't have that last year, but all the advantages were in the Celtics' favor and they weren't able to convert. And I think that's kind of been the theme with the Celtics is when they have that opportunity, they don't take advantage of it. There were a couple of times this postseason where we saw that, especially against Cleveland. There were some games that they should have blown Cleveland out. Even in that first round, even when they beat Miami, there were some times where they allowed Miami to keep the games closer than what it should have been. So the Celtics are just kind of known to play with their food. People are tired of that at this point. People want them to win a championship. There's nothing else that's going to satisfy NBA fans or Celtics fans about this season unless they're able to bring home an NBA championship. So that's the deal with the Celtics right now. But even if they bring home a title, even if they end up winning that first championship since I think 2008, NBA media isn't really going to respect it, right? I'm not saying I'm not going to respect it because I respect every championship that's won. It is a tough process to play an 82 game season, prepping day in and day out for whatever team you're matching up against, and then taking that into the playoffs and having to, play on the road and play at home and kind of interchange between those two things. It is a very tough process to win a championship and actually just generally be a playoff team. It's very tough. There's a lot of planning and a lot of work that goes into it. But judging by the way that NBA media is, NBA fans, social media, whatever the case may be, even if the Celtics win a championship this year, people aren't going to respect it. Think about 2020 when the Lakers won it in the bubble. People didn't respect it. Now, me personally, I respected it. I'm like, well, it's really tough for your season to kind of abruptly get cut short. Then now you have to go play in Disney World with no fans, no home court advantage, a bunch of different factors that players aren't really used to, and still come out on top and win a title. But like I said, NBA fans didn't respect it. They put an asterisk next to it and things like that. Or think about the Milwaukee Bucks when they won it in 2021. People saying things like they got lucky or it was a fluke and all these things. So NBA fans have a propensity towards disrespecting championships. I don't like it, but I just know that's what they do. So for the Celtics, even if they're able to convert this season and win a title, people are not going to respect it. Think about the Eastern Conference this year. Miami Heat weren't healthy. They had to play that first round without their best player, Jimmy Butler, who we know every single time he gets to the playoffs turns into a top 5 level player. They were also without Terry Rozier, who could have been like 20 points per game in that series, judging by his playoff history and his past playoff performances. And also, the Cleveland Cavaliers were without Donovan Mitchell for a substantial amount of time. I think he missed like 2 games, which is huge. If you're missing your best player for 2 games, it's very tough to win. Right. And then now they're in the Eastern Conference Finals matching up against the Pacers, who have also benefited from a ton of players being injured. Obviously, in that first round, they matched up against a Bucks team that was without Giannis Antetokounmpo. And in the second round, they matched up against the Knicks team, who were without OG Anunoby for a substantial amount of the series, and were also without Julius Randle. So even if they beat this Pacer squad and they get to the finals and match up against maybe like the Mavericks or the Wolves, people still aren't going to respect it because they're going to say, well, their path to that championship was super easy. People did that with LeBron. They discounted a bunch of his championships under the guise that the Eastern Conference was really, really easy and there wasn't as much competition through the Eastern Conference, especially when he was with Cleveland during that second stint. So even when he got there and won that championship, that was the excuse that people ran with. You didn't play many teams on the way there. That's just a thing that NBA fans are going to do, right? So even if the Celtics end up taking home this title, there's going to be so much pressure on them next season to repeat. Because even if they don't repeat, let's say if they win that championship this year, if they don't repeat next season, which is super down the road, this championship they win this year, hypothetically, is going to be seen as a fluke. That's just what NBA fans do. That's the way things are, right? So I don't know if the Celtics are really going to be able to win over the general public during this entire Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown era, even if they're able to bring home a title, right? It's going to be a really difficult thing to do. And it's not fair because things happen all the time, right? To kind of put the advantage in one team's favor. So, like, there's always going to be injuries in the playoffs. There's always going to be situations where the other team is going to be at a major disadvantage, not by their own fault, that another team is going to be able to take advantage of. That type of stuff happens all the time. It happens with a lot of championship teams. It happens with more championship teams throughout NBA history than we think. But I just know, judging by the general perception on the Boston Celtics and the general perception on how NBA fans could be with how they react to teams winning and how they don't really appreciate the process behind that, I really feel like it's going to be tough for Boston to just win over the general public, even if they convert on the things that people expect them to convert on this particular season, right? They're going to be saying things like, well, they benefited from being the most talented team in the Eastern Conference by far. They benefited from a ton of injuries. And I did want to see them match up against a healthy Heat team. And did I have them winning in the first round against the Heat if they were super healthy? Probably not. I thought the Heat were going to be able to take advantage of him. And it was almost kind of apparent because Boston played with their food a little bit. That team is known to play with their food. They're known to kind of let certain teams stay in games longer than what they should. Or if they would have had to see a healthy Milwaukee Bucks team. I know Milwaukee struggled during the regular season, but again, with how the Celtics tend to play with their food and let teams stay in games longer than what they should, who knows what would have happened there. So yes, Boston is benefiting from not having to play a bunch of teams that are super healthy, right? And not having to play a bunch of all-star, superstar level players on their way here to hopefully winning a championship. I get it. And given that, I just see NBA media, NBA social media fans, all of those things, I really see them reacting in a negative way to the Boston Celtics if they end up winning a title. Think about the Denver Nuggets last year. They won a championship, right? But all people were saying was, well, they lost to an 8 seed. The Miami Heat didn't really have that many options. The Heat didn't have Tyler Hero that series. I just know the way people are, right? So it's going to be very tough for Boston to truly establish themselves in this particular era, to truly have this positive general perception about themselves, just based off how NBA fans tend to react unfairly to teams winning titles. Rarely do we ever focus on the good that a team did to win a game. They focus on what didn't happen, what the other team didn't do. Denver had that issue last year, and they win the Western Conference, and people are only talking about what the Lakers didn't do, right? Same this year. The Nuggets beat the Lakers in the first round. All people could talk about was what the Lakers didn't do, the coaching and all of this stuff, instead of giving teams credit. I think that as NBA fans, we need to kind of get out of that, right? Where we focus on the what ifs or the negatives or whatever the case may be, and we throw that in the faces of the teams who win, right? And we never truly give them credit, right? And I really feel like that's going to be the issue for the Celtics if they're able to take home a title this season, right? Or you got through a really easy Eastern Conference. You didn't really have to play that many teams, or you didn't have to play that many All-Stars along the way. I think it's unfair, and I think it's really been killing NBA discourse on many platforms. But that's just the way things are. So tough breaks for the Celtics. I do have a lot of hope for them. I do think they're going to end up beating the Pacers in like 5 or 6 games this particular series. I think there are just too many great defensive matchups they have to be able to slow down Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam. And I don't know how translatable that Pacers defense is going to be once they match up against such a well-rounded Celtics offensive attack that has more options than we've ever seen them have during this Tatum and Brown era. But I just know the way things are going to be if they're able to bring home an NBA championship, even if they end up facing a really tough team in the NBA Finals, which is going to be the case because they're going to end up playing either the Wolves or the Mavericks. People are still going to kind of put this tremendous asterisk on it and look at how easy the Eastern Conference was on their way to maybe winning a championship. So we'll see how things end up happening. We'll see how the series ends up going. But as I said, it's just tough to know that I can just see how people are going to react to things, even if the Celtics are able to take one home this year.